So, for the third straight year, the Brooklyn Nets have flipped their roster at the turn of the new year. Apparently, this is some weird tradition we have here in Brooklyn. I don't know what's going on. Year one, it was Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, Taurean Prince, etc. for James Harden. Then in year two, it was Harden who got shipped off to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and Andre Drummond. And then this year, well, things really hit the fan. After contract negotiations fell through with the Nets, Kyrie Irving was sent off to Dallas for Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and other stuff. And then it was Kevin Durant who followed shortly after, heading off to Phoenix for Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, and a boatload of picks. The war chest has been refilled for the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, this signifies the end of Brooklyn's championship window, at least right now. And it's unclear if the Nets are going to undergo a full rebuild or just a retool on the fly. But in the interim, the Brooklyn Nets are likely going to be in the playoffs just because of the success that the Durant and Irving Nets had in the first 50 games. And plus, the new look Nets should be able to play something along the lines of 500-ish basketball in the final 24 games. So yeah, that kind of suggests they're going to be in the playoffs just because of the depth of this team alone. In the time that the four newest additions have taken the floor, the Nets have gone 1-2 with a narrow loss against the Philadelphia 76ers at home, a tough beatdown against the crosstown rival New York Knicks, and a very convincing victory over the Miami Heat just before the All-Star break. So today we're going to be taking a look at the first-time Nets, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, and Mikal Bridges, beginning with Bridges, who's coming off a career-high 45 points against the Miami Heat just before the All-Star break. Let's see what he brings to the table. Bridges entered the league as a 3-and-D specialist, and that three-point shot remains pure. He's absolutely lethal from the corners. He's got a high release point well above his head that basically makes his shot impossible to block. And you'll see him hit some threes off movement on occasion. And because he's such a good shooter, he'll force closeouts, and then from there he can catch and go and find his way to the rim. But Bridges has grown his game outside of that 3-and-D archetype over the years, and posting up was one of his first new additions to his game as a Phoenix Sun. But his growth in the last two seasons has been as a mid-range scorer. And when Devin Booker went down with injury, Bridges thrived as the number one option and oozed potential that had many wondering if he could be a future All-Star. His ability to create for himself has taken such a massive leap, and though he doesn't have a ton of shake in his dribble package, some crossovers, maybe a hesitation dribble, a series of tween dribbles, his high release point and 7'1" wingspan gives him some room to get his shot off regardless of how well he creates the shot initially. Dare I say it, it's very Kevin Durant light. I mean, seriously, doesn't this shot with Bridges coming up the right baseline into the handoff to get to the free throw line jumper look a little Kevin Durant-esque? One thing I like is that he can make his pull-up shots with his momentum going a variety of directions. He can be leaning forward, backwards, and he'll even toss in the occasional sidestep to create that extra space. And if there's one reason to buy Mikal's leap as a potential star outside of his growth as a pull-up shooter in the mid-range, it's the fact that he can create shots for himself no matter how many dribbles he takes. To me, that just screams star-level shot creation. That said, there are certain plays, like this pull-up three, where Bridges doesn't quite look comfortable creating for himself. One thing I've noticed is that the Nets have looked to get Mikal going by running him off elbow screens to generate mid-range shots, and that's something that Monty Williams did quite a bit in Phoenix for Bridges, so I asked Nets head coach Jacques Vaughn about it this week.
Just based on my amateur eye, it looks like you guys have integrated some things that Phoenix ran, little screens at the elbows for Mikal. You guys have run some stack pick and roll. Just curious if that has been an integration process, what that integration process has been like and how it's worked with, I guess, the new guys in your core group.
Yeah, so definitely integrated. I think where you see is the way we started. So, when Kay was here, we had that similar pin down. Nick would go get Kevin, but we started at a different angle. Just looking at some of the Phoenix stuff, and to get Mikal a little bit more freedom, we moved it up to the elbow. And then we're kind of playing out of that for sure.
The next step for Bridges will likely be what he can do when he's forced to dribble all the way to the rim. Floaters currently don't look super comfortable for him. But even here, we get a flash of what it may look like if he improves that specific skill set. And if he were to replace some of his at-rim attempts with short-range jumpers, that's certainly a workaround. I do appreciate Bridges' unselfish nature. He's a willing passer. Here we get a nice little Euro step before the dump off to Nick Claxton, and this is just a nasty pass to the top of the arc after drawing in a crowd of defense. Still though, he's not perfect and will force passes that just really aren't there. I have no idea what he was thinking on this lob given that Claxton has 2 players defending him. And here, this lob pass to Day'Ron Sharpe is pretty late. Overall, I like Mikal's willingness to pass, but I'm lower on this ability due to his timing, accuracy, and recognition as a passer. Alright, let's get into the good stuff, his defense. I will put it like this: Bridges will give Defensive Player of the Year candidate Nick Claxton a run for his money as the best defender on the Nets team. And the Nets now have 2 guys that can swat away shots in transition. Bridges' 7'1" wingspan aids him tremendously when it comes to erasing airspace for opposing creators. But it's his footwork that stands out to me for why he's such a ridiculous perimeter defender. He stays down in his stance on dribble moves and pump fakes, and he flips his hips and changes directions tremendously when an opposing player makes his move. It's just so hard to shake Mikal. You get a feel for his unique movement skills as a defender on his closeouts, which, wow. The speed that he closes out is one thing, but he's just so good at stopping dead in his tracks to contest 3-point shots instead of flying by. And I think a lot of this just stems from the fact he trusts his long arms to do the majority of the legwork when taking away 3-point windows. Mikal likes to press opponents full court to slow them into getting into their sets, which I love. And though he's more on the slender side, he's pretty damn comfortable battling with bigger opponents with physicality when needed. Here, fronting Jericho Sims to erase the post-up mismatch after the switch with Nick Claxton. Then when RJ Barrett gets by Cam Johnson, Bridges rotates over as the helper to halt the drive. Yes, you're watching this correctly. Mikal defends 3 different players in the same possession and is quite literally everywhere at once. And come to think of it, that's probably the best way to describe Bridges on defense, always in the right place. Here, ignoring PJ Tucker to wall up against a driving James Harden. And here, when Caleb Martin shakes free on this backdoor cut, Bridges rotates over as the low man to save the day. It helps that Mikal is such a great communicator on defense. First, he fronts Bam Adebayo to give Brooklyn time to double on this low post touch. Then from there, Bridges calls out matchups to his teammates as the Nets rotate out of the disadvantage, and Bridges finds Jimmy Butler in the corner. And this is probably my favorite defensive play I've seen thus far from Mikal Bridges. First, he ignores Caleb Martin at the 3-point line to shade early help towards Jimmy Butler, who is facing up against Spencer Dinwiddie in the post. Then when Jimmy makes his move on the step through, Bridges rotates over at the perfect time to double. And then when Jimmy is forced to pass out, Bridges beats him to the spot and intercepts the kick out to Martin. And that's something Bridges seems to do a lot. He fools offensive players into making silly passes like a mousetrap. Bridges' so-called twin Cam Johnson has also been a nice surprise as a net, and though he hasn't shot the 3-ball great in Brooklyn, you get to see how quick his release is. He's a legit movement shooter too, here sprinting down to the corner on this baseline drift for the perfect catch and release 3. And because of his shooting, the Nets have been able to get creative with their sets. Here, Mikal Bridges sets a ram screen for Cam Johnson, who comes off that screen to set a screen of his own for Ben Simmons. Only next, he ghosts that screens and slips into a pick and pop when Miami goofs up their switching. This is just a fun variation of Chicago action. Bridges sets a pin down for Johnson like normal Chicago action, but instead of Johnson coming off the handoff like normal, it's Bridges who gets the handoff while Johnson cuts through into the paint. Simmons then rolls and then sets a screen for Johnson, who cuts back out to 3, and it's an open look from that distance. Just an awesome set from Jacques Vaughn. And unlike Bridges, he's capable of creating 3-point shots off the dribble, at least by the numbers. Here, changing directions with one singular dribble when the initial look isn't there. Johnson doesn't really have a great handle, but he's a solid straight line driver if he's run off the line. And generally speaking, Cam is just really good at picking his spots as a driver. And I love how aggressive and fearless he is at driving into a crowd, absorbing contact and finishing strong. It isn't always perfect, and here his limited handle hurts him when he's forced to pick up his dribble early and throw up this really ugly shot. And asking him to create his own shot isn't really a great idea. He doesn't get much out of posting up this mismatch against Jalen Brunson. Like Bridges, he's a good, maybe not great passer, and he's found Brooklyn's bigs on occasion with some nice dimes. He's improved a ton as a defender since entering the league, moving his feet well and using his frame to wall wall off his matchups. And overall, I'd grade him out as above average in this category. We're really not going to spend a ton of time on Dorian Finney-Smith, who's effectively your typical 3-and-D player. I will say he's by far Brooklyn's most rugged and physical defender, here taking away middle from Julius Randle not once but twice to force up 2 ugly misses. And here he bodies up the very strong Jimmy Butler to make him spin away from the rim. He stays down on Jimmy's trademark pump fakes, and then he contests and finishes the play with good verticality. The only other note I have on Finney-Smith is that things can get pretty wild and precarious if he's run off the 3-point line. And this, coupled with his tunnel vision, makes him miss reads like this easy pass to an open Cam Johnson in the corner. And that wraps up my thoughts on the new look Nets. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe, and go ahead and share it on Twitter and Reddit. If you enjoy my content, join the other 20,000 people, still crazy to say, that follow me on Twitter. I do a bunch of similar stuff on there, video threads, articles, you name it. But that's all I've got today, folks. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.